franchement, c'est les Haïtiens qui ont tué Haïti, en laissant le narcotrafic. Et là, ce qu'ils ont fait, le Premier ministre était super, il est défendu, ils l'ont viré. C'est terrible, c'est terrible. Et moi, je ne peux pas remplacer. Ils sont complètement cons. Ils n'auraient jamais dû le sortir. Le Premier ministre était formidable.
While the French President Emmanuel Macron has hurled unfriendly and inappropriate words against the Presidential Transitional Council of Haiti for the action of firing Prime Minister Gary Conil and replacing him with Alexis Didier Fils, Macron said that frankly it is the Haitians who have destroyed Haiti by allowing drug trafficking, and then what they did. The Prime Minister was superb. I defended him and they sacked him. Well, he also used a derogatory term to refer to the Presidential Transitional Council as a senseless group that did not have to fire the former Prime Minister Gary Conil. Well, it is shocking to hear this from the French president, more so the line that he says that it is the Haitians who have destroyed Haiti by allowing drug trafficking. History tells us different, that the French have a hand in what is experienced in Haiti even today. The history that we know is that French colonized Haiti, and French did a lot of atrocities against Haitians to make them to be what they are today. And in this video, we are going to teach the French president, Emmanuel Macron, about some history of the relationship between France and Haiti, where the two countries came from, and what France did to Haiti. And we are going to investigate that line, that is it the Haitians who destroyed Haiti, or is it France that destroyed Haiti? This is Bonafide. Welcome to this video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, kindly subscribe. Well, as history teaches us, the first colonial entity to dock at the La Hispaniola island was Christopher Columbus. All the way from Spain, he docked at St. Nicholas, today part of Haiti. He claimed the entire island and said that it belongs to Spain. At that time, there was a booming demand in Europe for coffee and sugar. So the French fought the Spanish to get a piece of the island. At the end of the day, they decided to divide the island into two. On one side, we had the Spanish-controlled Santo Domingo, and on the other side, we had the French-controlled Saint-Domingue. Notably, before the invaders went into La Hispaniola Island, there were over 500,000 indigenous people living in this piece of land. But over time, they diminished because of the diseases and the new culture that was brought by the invaders. That meant that there was a lack of labor, and the French needed labor. They needed labor to exhaust the agricultural rich region that they had got, the Saint-Domingue region of this Hispaniola Peninsula. So what the French did is that they went to West Africa and ferried many slaves to come and work in this piece of land that they had gotten from the Spanish. The French wanted sugarcane, the French wanted coffee. So they made the slaves to work in very brutal conditions in sugarcane plantations and coffee plantations so that they could ferry this produce back to Europe. And by that time, as the French continued to colonize this piece of land, France was producing about 40% of Europe's sugar. That just shows the kind of scale of farming and slavery that the French were having in the now called Haiti. These people were not treated as human beings. They worked as animals in these plantations so that they can provide the French with what they needed in those plantations. They were slaves. And that took a toll on the population that was there, the African population that was ferried from West Africa all the way to Haiti. They totaled to a number of 700,000. And as time went, they got tired of the treatment that they were getting from the French. They started a revolution in 1791. This revolution went all through to 1804 when they got their independence. But in between this revolution, a lot of blood was shed. The Haitians fought for this independence through their own blood and sweat, and no one helped the Haitians to fight this revolution. They eventually came out successful. They were able to revolt against the French, and the French left the land. This was the first ever recorded successful slave revolt to ever happen, and this was now the first Black republic across the world. Well, this was not taken lightly by the countries that surrounded Haiti at that time. We had the British, the US, the Spanish, the French. They did not take this revolt, unsuccessful revolt for that matter, lightly because all of them had slaves in different capacities. So they decided to isolate Haiti. And that isolation was spearheaded by France because they say that you cannot be friends with Haiti, a country that has revolted, the first African republic, that if you recognize this country, they will go ahead and spearhead movements within your territories so that they can also revolt and you will face the same consequences. France saw it as if they have lost their capital, they have lost their plantations. They did not see the human factor when it came to how they treated the people in Haiti. They did not value the people who lived in Haiti at that time. What they saw was capital lost, and they tried as much as possible to influence other countries not to recognize Haiti. Well, that worked because the US was very skeptical. The US feared because at that time, the US had a president that was a slave owner himself. He feared that his own slaves will revolt against him. There were a lot of Americans at that time also with slaves. They feared that the slaves will revolt against them if Haiti will be recognized as a country. And this was the same script with all other powers that existed around Haiti that could have recognized Haiti. And recognition is not just by name, is by the virtue that if you are recognized as a republic, as a fellow republic, then you can be able to trade, you can be able to have international relations, you can be able to operate as a country and earn money because now you'll be able to exchange goods, you'll be able to get the privileges of being a country. But the fact that Haiti was not recognized by these countries for a total of about 2 decades, almost 2 decades, really shows the kind of devastation that these countries had planned for Haiti. And beyond the colonization, we started seeing the hallmarks of a targeted conspiracy to make Haiti to remain poor just because it was the first black republic to exist in the world at that time. So what happened is that in 1825, the French decided to recognize Haiti, but that came at a price. They say that they are going to recognize Haiti if Haiti is going to pay France for the reparations, for the capital lost, which is something that was unheard of and is still very puzzling because what we know is that it is the colonizers who are the ones who pay the ones who were colonized because of the suffering that they made them to go through. But this one was special because France say that you are the ones who are going to pay us, and in return, we're going to recognize you and you're going to exist now as a country because they saw the kind of devastation that they were meeting on Haiti as not being recognized. So Haiti decided that we need that recognition. Without that recognition, then Haiti will not progress from where it was. So that meant that Haiti would agree to pay France out of their own colonization in that country. And that sum of money was not little. France quoted that Haiti should pay its republic to a total of 150 million francs. To translate that in modern day currency, that will total to a sum of 560 million US dollars in today's sum. That is a great whole amount of money that Haiti had to pay. Remember, this is a young country. This is a country that has not been recognized. This is the first country to recognize the country and already is being mad in debt, a debt that is undeservingly put on their shoulders that they should work to pay. In other words, France was saying that you are going to still be our slaves and you're going to pay us money, even if we are not going to interfere with what you're doing internally at that time. So Haiti decided to start paying, but they could not have the money to pay these debts. So they opted to borrow from the French government so that they could pay that money in what is termed as the double debt, that you're borrowing from the French banks to pay the French government itself. So you will still incur interest, you will pay interest to the French government, and yet you are still paying the French. So France was earning money twice in that kind of a scenario. And that took a toll in Haiti. In fact, Haiti paid the French debt for 122 years. 122 years means that all this time, Haiti was not investing in its own country, it was not investing in its own people. That meant that all the money that was being collected at that time went to France. It went to benefit the French. It went to benefit the economy of France. So it is very inappropriate for the French president in 2024 to step out and say that it is the Haitians who have destroyed Haiti by allowing drug trafficking. Where is drug trafficking even coming from at this point in time? Because you have denied this country its own revenue for 122 years. That is equivalent to 21 billion to the economy. 21 billion of Haitian money has been lost that could have been invested in that country for 122 years to make Haiti a great nation. Therefore, it is not right for the French president to come out and say that Haiti had destroyed its own country by allowing drug trafficking. It is very inappropriate. It is uncalled for, and it is something that the French president has to apologize to Haitians, and he has to apologize to all countries that France colonized. Because this is a moment that the African Union, African presidents, and French colonies across the world that have suffered under the French rule should have united and say that, President Macron, you did a wrong thing here. You said something very false, something very ill about this country, yet you know the negative effects that your country has done to Haiti. It is not appropriate for you to make these unsubstantiated claims, yet history tells us different. It will be a better conversation for France to start paying Haiti the money that it owes Haiti. That is the money that belongs to Haitian people. It is the money that can stabilize Haiti right now. The people in Haiti are not fighting because of drugs. They are fighting because they don't have livelihoods. If these people had places where they can go to work and earn their living, they could not be out there supporting gangs or carrying weapons against each other. These are people who were denied their resources. They were denied their birthright by the French government. The French government is the last government that should come out to criticize the people of Haiti. In fact, what the French president should do is just to keep quiet and support Haiti by repaying its debts. Make sure that it invests honestly in Haiti and stop supporting leaders in Haiti. We all don't know why Gary Conil was withdrawn from the prime minister position. We all questioned that because we know and we saw what Gary Conil was doing for Haiti at this time. But the last person who will come out and speak about the Haitian leadership and speak about the Haitian people will be the French president for what the French has done to Haiti. And what I've just said is just a synopsis, just a little history of the French involvement in Haiti. The French have done much more atrocities to Haiti that cannot be documented in just 15 minutes or 10 minutes. These atrocities have to be mentioned, they have to be spoken about by all people who appreciate Pan-Africanism. These illegal acts have to be called out, and the fact that the French president is speaking in this manner to this Presidential Transitional Council is shocking, because we know that he could not have spoken these words to any other country, but he chose to speak these words against Haiti, a black country. This can also be termed as discrimination. Why should he hurl words at the leadership of a particular country, while we know that he should respect the leadership of a particular country, regardless of the opinion that other people might have? He is the president. He is not just Emmanuel Macron. He is the president. He has to abide by the laws that exist of respect to a particular republic. He should have respected the Presidential Transitional Council. He should at least use formal words to describe the situation in Haiti, and not to peg it on Haitians, but to acknowledge history. Acknowledge history, acknowledge the faults that France has done to Haiti, and that will chart a better way forward by starting to repay Haiti of the debts that France owes Haiti, by starting to speak about reparations, by starting to speak about how the French government can invest back in Haiti, by starting to speak about how Haiti can get out of the mess that it is in right now. The talk about the Presidential Transitional Council is only bringing about the negative comments that we are seeing online right now regarding the relationship between France and Haiti. So that is just a synopsis of the history that the French President Emmanuel Macron has to know, the relationship between France and Haiti, and the fact that France has a very huge role to play in the crisis that is facing Haiti today. That one has to be spelled out in capital letters and very, very clear that France has a major share in the crisis that is happening in Haiti today because of what they did, because of the huge amount of money that they denied Haiti. And that is counting to the insurgencies that is happening today. You cannot deny a country 21 billion worth of investment for 122 years, then claim that it is drug trafficking. No, that one cannot be. The French President Emmanuel Macron was wrong to call out the Haitian Presidential Council. They should allow the processes to work and use formal channels and respectful language to communicate on issues to do with other countries, especially the relationship between France and Haiti.